Hello, Soraya Bastian here, and you are watching Beyond Breath TV, the place to be to overcome your husband's infidelity and create a beautiful marriage. Perhaps for years you have felt something off in your marriage, an icky feeling, a disconnect, something is just not right. You've searched through your husband's phone, you've tracked his car, you've looked through his phone records, you've maybe even found the information that you were looking for. But with that knowledge, nothing seems to make sense, and you aren't sure what to do. So you've presented your concerns to your husband, you've told him what you've found, you've begged for him to tell you what's going on. And then finally, almost like an answer to your prayers, you find out the truth. Real solid evidence of his confession. Or the other woman reaches out. But there it is. Your thoughts and feelings of ick and disconnect and just not right, validated. And as much as you hoped that knowing this information would be the end of the suffering and the beginning of renewal, you realize it is only the beginning of a long road of suffering. Does this story ring somewhat true to your experience so far, as you have found out the debilitating truth of your husband's infidelity? If so, I am going to ask you to continue to listen as I speak to you today about why knowing every single detail about the affair can actually be harmful to you and what needs to happen instead. As I mentioned, after you find out the truth of what has been going on, it's only the beginning. You thought your investigation tactics were good before you in fact knew, but now they have been multiplied by 10 million. You almost become a mad woman as you search through anything you can get your hands on. His wallet, receipts, digging through his pockets, looking at the credit card statements, going back and watching the nanny cams, opening any email that even presents itself as somewhat suspicious, tracking all social media, who he's followed, and correspondences that have taken place. You ask him what happened, how it happened, why did it happen? And then you ask him again. You're seeking for the missing pieces to the puzzle so that you can see the story clearly in your head. You need to be able to watch this horror movie from start to finish with every single detail available. What's magical is that if you don't know the details, your mind fills in the blanks for you. And still, it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. It still feels like there's a missing piece. And it's starting to make you go crazy. This is a heavy topic and can feel so disorienting, especially as you read or hear from experts that in order to heal, to save your marriage, to move on, you need to know the details. However, although you've done your research, you don't feel better. With new information you discover or are told, you feel more distant from your husband. And still, you dig for more. Can I ask you a question? Is this helping you? Do you feel stuck behind the need to know? Like until you have every single detail, you just can't move on? Like until you have all the pieces put perfectly together, you are at a standstill? I hear you, I see you, I know and completely understand the exact chaos of this. And please allow me to expand your mind just for a minute on why knowing the details of your husband's infidelity feels empty and incomplete as you strive to save your marriage. When infidelity enters your marriage without your permission, your brain is hijacked. According to a 2006 study by the National Institute of Health, trauma mainly affects three important parts of your brain: the amygdala, which is your emotional and instinctual center, the hippocampus, which controls memory, and the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for regulating your emotions and impulses. All three parts work together to manage stress. After this emotional trauma, every time you find new evidence or hear the answer to the question you've been searching for, thinking you need this piece in order to find peace, you're reminded of this traumatic experience. Your amygdala, which is your emotional and survival center, goes into overdrive, acting just as it would if you were experiencing your discovery day all over again. So instead of the peace and calm you are seeking, you only unravel once again the pain, the reminders, the sensations, and the heartache. When this is happening with your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex also becomes suppressed. This means you are less capable of controlling your fear, and you literally get stuck in a purely reactive state. One of the reasons you desire controlling your husband after his infidelity is because you don't have control over yourself. As soon as your mind begins sharing the visuals and images of the nightmare story, sadness, rage, and fear take over your behavior. While your husband is at work, you work up enough fuel to build a bonfire. And because of your inability to control your actions and behaviors, when he returns from work, he's greeted with the silent treatment, a bed on the couch, and the divorce papers drawn. But you don't mean it. This reactive state keeps you cycling in your marriage and sometimes ends up doing more harm than the infidelity itself. Meanwhile, rehashing the images and visuals and searching for the missing piece to the puzzle also leads to reduced activity in the hippocampus, one of whose function is to distinguish between past and present. In other words, your brain can't tell the difference between the actual traumatic event and the memory of it. So anytime anything reminds you of his infidelity, you get triggered and feel as though you are in danger right now. Listen, I know knowing every detail of your husband's affair sounds like a good idea. It sounds like it could be a solid place to start repairing your marriage, but it's not. Rehashing, searching, digging, conversing, policing, all of this work you are putting into knowing can cause your brain to remain in a state of hypervigilance, suppressing your memory and impulse control and trapping you in a constant state of strong emotional reactivity. I worked at a therapeutic center for almost a decade under one of the world's foremost experts in sexual addiction and betrayal trauma. And one of the main things the therapist helped the couples in our office work towards is what we call a therapeutic full disclosure. A therapeutic disclosure is a planned disclosure in a therapist's office where an addict provides information to his partner regarding all of his sexual behaviors from the time he has known his partner until the present time. Week after week, I watched as already traumatized women fretted, worried, and prepared for the bomb of information their husbands were preparing to drop on them. They felt as if their healing couldn't begin until they knew everything. They felt fearful that the information their husbands would provide them was going to be partial and that they would be given the trickle truth of information. They felt like they had to prepare themselves with a self-care weekend post full disclosure to help them escape from the information they were going to be given. And they felt stuck in their ability to move and connect with their husbands, and it couldn't happen until they had this information. Because of my position within the center, I unfortunately saw the aftermath of disclosures. The women who were traumatized before were now bedridden most days with the heaviness of this information. They had no real tools to process. They had no real skills to build their marriage up from where it had been razed to. Their inability to function in their daily lives because of the overwhelm of information brought on shame and embarrassment as their children were now affected by the wake of what had happened and how their feelings of failure at being a mother. And more than not, they would find out somewhere down the road that not all information was given during the disclosure process, which once again unraveled any progress and put the couple further back than even the beginning. And because of that, would fall further and more distant from their husband than they did prior to this event. The problem remains that your belief that you need to know all of the information of what your husband did is required before your healing can begin is false. And that usually finding or learning more information before you clear your emotional trauma is not only damaging to your marriage, it's also keeping your psychobiology operating in a place of trauma, which ends up affecting your health on all different levels, but that's worth another episode of Beyond Breath YouTube TV in and of itself. Now, you're probably thinking, but Soraya, I really feel like I need to know. I really feel like without this information, I can't make an informed decision. So let me ease your mind just for a moment. There definitely is a time and place within your marriage's recovery to begin processing and moving through all this information. But for it to be effective and to help your marriage, you first have to clear your emotional trauma. By clearing your emotional trauma, you heal and restore the 3 parts of your brain that are impacted so severely and that keep you cycling around the trauma through replaying the images, refeeling the sensations, and reacting in an uncontrollable way. Only by clearing your emotional trauma does the desire to dig, police, research, and survey your husband cease. But that's just the beginning. Once you have cleared your emotional trauma, you have to find stabilization within yourself to not be pulled back into the desire to react to the uncomfortable feelings or uncomfortable thoughts. And believe me, when you hear the full disclosure, you will experience both of those things. But because of the practice you've had in reacting to discomfort, we have to create a sustainable skill that will keep you from sliding back into that, to build trust within yourself, to be able to move forward. If you are going to hear his disclosure, you need to have a solidness within yourself, an ability to process the information, hold it with understanding, and know what to do with all the feelings and emotions that follow. And then, and only then, can you begin to connect with your husband in a way that will take your marriage to the next level. At this point, after you have cleared your emotional trauma and created a solid ground for your marriage to stand on, is it possible to hear what your husband has to say and have it be helpful in healing your marriage in a way that brings you closer together? Your marriage can heal. You can get to a place where you can hold all the information your husband gives you with love and compassion. You can allow that information to be a stepping stone to the marriage you desire, but only after you clear, create, and connect. Now, I'd love to hear from you. I have 2 questions for you. 1, have you been caught in the cycle of wanting to know more, digging and trying to find the missing piece to your piece? And if so, were you able to find it? And 2, have you experienced a therapeutic full disclosure? And if so, what was your experience following it? I can't wait to read your answers, so please tell me in the comments below. And be sure to head over to sorayabastian.com and subscribe to become a Beyond Breath Insider. You'll gain instant access to an awesome training where I share the specific secrets and details to creating a marriage full of passion, intimacy, and connection after your husband's infidelity, as well as some exclusive content, some special giveaways, and personal updates from me that I don't share anywhere else. Thank you for joining me today. I love you. Bye-bye.